This will be for the Khan Academy exercise, chain rule intro. All right, so the chain rule, it works well for composite functions. And the basic chain rule, derivative with respect to x of f of g of x equals f prime of g of x times g of x. Okay, the way I can remember it in my mind, it's going to be the derivative of the outer function, and you leave the inner function alone, times the derivative of the inner function. All right, so let's say f is the outer function and g of x is the inner function. It's going to be the derivative of f, and you basically just leave the inner function alone and then multiply by the derivative of the inner function. All right, so that's what I wrote in my own words. And basically, sometimes you might see it written like this. All right, and this is basically why the chain rule works. Because if you want to find the derivative of y with respect to x, that's equivalent to the derivative of y with respect to t times the derivative of t with respect to x. Notice when you multiply these, the dt, the derivative with respect to t, cancels, and it's derivative of y with respect to x. All right. Really, this quote right here, I think that's the easiest way to remember it. All right, so here we want to find the derivative of cosine of 5x minus 9. All right, so clearly the cosine is the outer function and the 5x minus 9 is the inner function. So we said in the quotations, you take the derivative of the outer function. So the derivative of the cosine is going to be the negative sign. You leave the inner function alone, so that's going to be 5x minus 9. And that's going to be times the derivative of the inner function. The derivative of 5x is just 5. And the derivative of negative 9 is 0. So you just leave it off. Okay, so rewriting, since it's 5 times this and we have a negative sign, it's going to be negative 5 sine of 5x minus 9. All right, final answer. So I will do this another way in terms of f and g. It's really the same thing. All right, if you want to make f the outer function and g the inner function, f prime of g of x times g prime of x. Let's do it that way. All right, so if we make f the cosine function and the inner function g of x is going to be 5x minus 9, so we're taking the derivative. So f prime, the derivative of cosine, is going to be negative sine. And that's going to be not times, but basically you leave the inner function alone. The inner function is 5x minus 9. And then times the derivative of g. We see that g, the g function is 5x minus 9. The derivative of this right here is just 5. The derivative of 5x is just 5. And the derivative of negative 9 is 0. Okay, so this is it right here. You could just move the 5 out front if you want. All right, so that is clearly answer C. Negative 5 sine 5x minus 9. All right, h of x is 5 minus 6x to the power of 5. They want us to find the derivative, h prime of x. So it's not always worth labeling the inner and outer function. All right, that's why I put my thing in quotes here for the notes. Derivative of the outer and leave the inner alone times the derivative of the inner. All right, so that's what I'm going to do here. Basically, this part right here is the inner function. All right, so if we want to find the derivative, what we're going to do, we're going to move the 5 out front. Okay, this is the power rule. 5 out front, leave the inner function alone. 5 minus 6x. And remember, for the power rule, you decrease the exponent by 1. So 5 minus 1 is 4. All right, so we left the inner alone. And now we have to do times the derivative of the inner function. The derivative of 5 is 0. The derivative of negative 6x is just negative 6. All right, so these are all multiplied. So negative 6 times 5, that's going to be negative 30. And we still have 5 minus 6x to the fourth. That whole thing is to the fourth. Final answer. Answer A. All right, derivative of negative x squared plus 6x minus 4 to the fifth. Derivative of y with respect to x. Notice they use different notations, okay, but it's all the same. So again, derivative of the outer, leave the inner alone, times the derivative of the inner. All right, so this part right here is the inner function. We're going to leave it alone at first. We're going to use the power rule once again. Take the 5 and move it out front. Leave the inner alone, negative x squared plus 6x minus 4. Power rule, you decrease the exponent by 1, so 5 minus 1 is 4. And that's going to be times the derivative of the inner, okay? The derivative of negative x squared is negative 2x. The derivative of positive 6x is just positive 6. And the derivative of negative 4 is just 0. All right, these are all multiplied, so distributing. 5 times negative 2x is going to be negative 10x. 5 times positive 6 is positive 30. And that whole quantity is times this whole quantity, negative x squared plus 6x minus 4. And that is to the power of 4. So that right there is your final answer. All right, it looks like in their answer, they didn't even distribute it. So what I had at first matches answer D. Actually, it matches answer C. They mixed up the exponents. What I had matches C. All right, so this right here is the inner function. All right, we're going to leave that alone at first. Power rule, this is to the third. We take that power or exponent and move it out front. Leave the inner alone, so that's going to be ln of x. Power rule, decrease the exponent by 1, so 3 minus 1 is 2. Now we multiply by the derivative of inside, the inner function. Recall the derivative of ln of x is 1 over x. All right, these are all multiplied, so distributing 3 times 1 over x, that's going to be 3 over x, and that's times ln of x squared. All right, that whole thing, ln of x is squared. Final answer. And that is right here. Answer choice B. They just put x in the entire denominator. Same thing. All right, one more. Y equals ln of sine of x. Okay, we can clearly see the outer function is the natural log. The inner function is sine of x. Recall that if the function is natural log of x, the derivative of that is 1 over x. So we start with the derivative of the outer function, and that's going to be 1 over x. However, in this case, the x is sine of x. All right, remember we take the derivative of the outer and leave the inner alone. And that's going to be times the derivative of the inner. The derivative of sine of x is cosine of x. All right, and multiplying fractions, that's just cosine of x over sine of x. All right, ones like that are tricky, but if you practice, you'll get it. All right, if you want to see it in terms of f and g, I'll let the outer function f be the natural log. The inner function g of x is sine of x. All right, so we went over the derivative for natural log. If g of x is sine of x, the derivative of that is the cosine of x. So this is the outer, this is the inner. All right, we're finding the derivative. So we're basically doing the derivative of f of g of x. Okay, f is a natural log, but f prime is 1 over x. And g of x is the sine of x. And that's going to be times g prime of x, which is the cosine of x. So again, that's just cosine over sine. All right, same thing. So if you wanted to do it in terms of g and f, there you go. Answer C.